This week, guys, we're going to look at 3 of my favourite lures. Now, I love fishing lures. I've got lots of varieties, and narrowing down to just 3 was really difficult. But we're going to try our best. Lures are really important at this time of year. The fish are starting to slow down. There's not a lot of natural food around, and sometimes the best way of getting them is to just tap into that aggressive nature of trout and get a big lure in front of them. So the first one I'm going to tie is an old favourite. It's been around for a long time, but it's an absolutely fantastic fly. It's the gold butt cat's whisker. So let's get on and tie the first fly. The hook in the vise then is a Hanak H200 barbless hook. This one's at size 8 and it's on a heavy wire. Now, I usually tie this fly in much smaller sizes, size 10 down to 14. I use it for competition fishing quite a bit on the top dropper, or if I am fishing just a straight team of lures, I might fish it on the point. But on this occasion, just for instructional purposes, I'm tying it on the bigger hook. Now, it is a black nickel finish, and as always, when I'm using nano silk, and that's what I'm using today, at 12/0, as you can see, it's white initially. I'm going to get a touch of super glue onto the shank of the hook. Now, some people don't like that I use super glue. They say the fly discolours and that, but we're not talking about lashings of super glue here. We're talking about a small amount that just beds that nano silk onto the shank. So we'll get that up to just where a barb would be on a barbed hook, and I'll just locate my scissors. And then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to catch in some of this stuff. Now, this is Dave Downey's 6mm gold chenille. You might see some silver in there, and that's because this particular chenille that I have was given to me by Steve Cullen. I couldn't get a hold of any, and he kindly sent me some in the post. Now, what I like about this is, if you look closely, it's a yellow core. A lot of the other gold sort of frits you see, it has a white core, and I like this yellow. It's actually made for tying the shuggy or the humongous, which, who knows, we might come on to that one a little later. So I'm just catching that in at the butt. I'm going to bring my thread up to the point of the hook, and then I'm going to get several wraps. Now, the cat's whisker on its own is a great fly, and many of you will have heard of the cat's whisker if you do a lot of stillwater fishing. Very old fly now, but this little variation of it really does well, and not only as a straight lure as we're tying here today, but as a booby. So I tie it exactly the same as this, only I put booby eyes on the front of the fly. So the next thing then, we're going to get some green chenille. This chenille's from Troutline. I really like it because it's vivid and it's quite thin. So I'm going to try and expose some of the core. It's quite difficult. It's tightly packed in chenille. Now, as you can see, I've failed to do that. So another trick you can do to help you narrow that down is to get a lighter and just simply melt the end, and that'll give you a little bobble at the end. It'll get down into the core and you're able to then catch it in. So I'll bring my thread back up to the point of the hook, and then I can, that bubble that I've just created there with a lighter, I can tie in. I'm going to bring my thread all the way up to the front, and I'm going to leave approximately 2mm at the front of the hook, and then I can simply bring the chenille nice and tight, turns, pack it in, and then as I get up to my thread on my side, I'm going to capture that in like so. So yeah, I find this particularly good on the top dropper. when I'm fishing a team of flies, but it does work wonders if you're fishing a small fishery, just fished on its own on the point. So we've got our button and our bodies looking pretty good, and the next thing is some marabou. So it's white marabou, simple feather, and I want to get, probably I use from the tip of my thumb to my knuckle. I don't want it overly busy, but I do want it with a substantial enough wing that you get that movement that we all love marabou so much for. It's just superb. So I've just got a clump in my hand. What I'm going to do is just over my waste bin, I'm going to take away this waste here. I want the thicker feathers gone. The mobility's in these end feathers where you can see you're getting that movement with them. And that's the movement you'll get in the water. So take away the clump. Now I've got into the habit of putting a ramekin dish with a little water just at the side of my bench so that I can not worry about saliva to try and damp down some materials. Now I'm wanting to get this in securely with the nano silk. So I'm going to get that trapped in there like so. Then what I can do is come in with my whip finish tool, and I'm just going to get a little bit of varnish onto the thread. Like so. And whip finish that off. Now the fly is not finished by any stretch. If you recall the example I showed you, you can see that it does have a red head. So we're going to add that on. It's like an aftermarket improvement. So first of all though, before I do anything else, this is far too long. So I'm going to come in with my thumb and forefinger and just rip some of that marabou away. Never cut marabou when you're creating wings and stuff. Always leave it natural. Now to get all that fluff and marabou out the way, I'm going to dip my fingers into the ramekin dish here, and I'm just going to sweep that back. Now the disadvantage of the water is you do get a lot of water on your vise, but we'll clean that up at the end of the session. So we've got our wing on now. We've swept it straight back. If you were of a mind to, you can add any colour of head that you like. But I've always found through experience that red works. And I'm going to use some red Glow Bright here to create my red head. So we'll get a couple of turns on there. Once I've got that locked in, I can come in with my scissors and just remove my rat's tail. Now to finish off, we'll build the head. Want a nice prominent head on this. That looks pretty good. Again, I'll grab my whip finish tool. And you can use as many turns as you like on the whip finish. I often just stick to 3, but if I've got to fill a gap in the head, I will very often do more. So just to finish off then, and for quickness, we're going to use some UV resin. I'll just get as much of the resin off as possible. Just take care when you're applying your resin. You don't want to cloak the eye and you also don't want to get any of the resin onto the chenille. Then I can come in with my UV torch and simply cure the resin on the head there. And there we have an extremely effective lure. I find that it works particularly well in colder water. So in the months, the early season and quite late on in the season, you can get a lot of success with this fly. The gold arse cat's whisker. I hope you enjoyed that one. Let's move along to the next fly. Next then, we're going to move on to one of the most popular lures in the UK. It is without doubt one of the most effective flies you can tie if you're targeting brown trout. It's the Humongous, or the shuggy as it's sometimes known in Scotland. It's just an amazing fly. It can bring fish up from nowhere. Now, there is a white and silver variation of this fly, but I'm going to tie the black and gold. It's been the most effective for me, and I've had some of my best brown trout on this fly. So let's get on and tie it. Again, I'm going to be using a Hanak H200 at size 8. It's a barbless hook and it's in black nickel. Now, I'm going to start with a UTC thread at 140 denier, and the first thing we've got to do with a shuggy, it's best to get all your stuff ready, and I like to tie these in batches because there's a certain amount of drying time in between flies. I'll not waste your time though. I've done some Blue Peter stuff in the background and I've got the stuff ready, but I do want to go through the whole process of tying the fly. So what I've got here is some toilet chain. You get it from B&Q here in the UK, or if you're in America, Home Depot, wherever, but it's a toilet chain. And basically what you've got to do with this is get yourself some good wire cutters. Don't try and use scissors unless they're really old and you're using them for nothing else. Then select your eyes. We only want 2, and I hope you can see this okay. You snip the wire, and this gives you a little set of beaded eyes. So once you've cut as many eyes as you're tying, I tend to tie these in batches of 5. And what I do first of all is prepare the hooks. So I've got the hook in the vise, and what I'm going to do first off is just get a little bit more wax onto this pre-waxed thread. Can never have enough wax for this part. Catch in just behind the eye, and then I'm going to come back a couple of turns and I can remove my waste. Now, as for putting the eye on, you'll see that there is still quite a gap in the chain there. So I'm going to lay it on, side on, get one wrap over. As I'm tightening up here, I'm simply bringing it round to sit at the correct angle. Excuse my fingers, I know you can't see much here. And once I've got it onto the hook, I can then get it secured. Now, I don't count the turns while I'm doing this. I just want it firmly in place with as many thread wraps as you think fit. I like to really fill that gap between the 2 eyes with thread. Now you'll see it's moving about on the hook pretty freely at the moment, but that won't be the case in a minute. So we'll just release some of the thread. Now people tie these in all different types of sizes, and I know some guys that have fished competitions with mini Humongouses. I think that it doesn't really suit competition size flies, if I'm honest. I think the fly is at its best in the bigger sizes. But, you know, if you disagree, please do let me know in the comments section. Some of you might have had a lot of success. So next, I'm going to absolutely soak the head in super glue. I'm going to get right round, make sure I get every thread wrap and get that into place. Make sure that you, before it gets a chance to soak into the thread and dry, just make sure it's sitting exactly where you want it. And then, as I said, in Blue Peter fashion, here's one I've prepared earlier. and we'll just swap that over in the vise. I'll put this off to the side and I'll finish tying that later. Now it's amazing, the other day I was up at Albury doing a bit of fishing and videoing, and I didn't have any sort of flies that flies that I wanted anyway, so there was hardly any Humongouses in my boxes, and what I find is I tend to give them out. So when I'm at fisheries, if I'm getting some success, does happen on occasion, I pass flies out to fellow anglers, and suddenly I look in my boxes and I've got none for myself. But you know, it's always nice to be nice at a fishery. If you're having some luck, why not share your knowledge with fellow anglers and help them get into some fish? So I've got the hook prepared, and I'm moving over now to 6/0 classic wax thread. It's in black. I'm going to get some wax onto this, and then I'll come in behind the eye and catch my thread on. Come all the way back to just past where a barb would be actually, and take away my waste. Now, the underneath of this fly, I'm going to be using some of this original, which is not much left. This is the original gold and silver that's used on sparklers actually, Rutland sparklers. I'm going to try and pick out as much of the gold as I can from the silver, and I'm just, less is more with this. I don't want loads, so I'm just going to get it nice and thinned out, and then once I'm happy I've got what I need, I can come in with my scissors and take that away. Now once I've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tease out a few fibres. Don't want a straight cut, but you can't rip this stuff with your fingers. And then once I've got that how I want it, I'm going to measure it up, and I want about twice the length of the shank of the hook, and then I can get rid of my waste. And then I'll bring my thread up, and I'll trap that into place. Once I'm content that's sitting correctly, that's looking pretty good, I'll bring my thread back up, ready for the next part. So for the next part, I'm going to use, once again, Marabou. This is black, it's from F&F Fly Tying. Lovely deep colour, you can see it really is lovely in black, a nice feather. Now for this, you'll remember that I used in the last one from my tip of my thumb to my knuckle. Now with this, I want a much bigger, heavier tail. So I'm going to rip off as much as I can from the stalk. Once again, I'll take not too much this time. So the last time I took quite a lot, but this time I really want the length. So I'm only going to take the very end of the waist where it's been ripped from the stalk. I'll measure that up, and I'm going to catch that on. Now once you've got it trapped in, you can pull it back, keep it on top of the shank. You don't want it creeping round the sides. And that's looking not too bad, but it's still not bushy enough for me. So I'm going to grab my Marabou feather once more, rip off another batch of fibres. Again, I'm going to just take that little bit off my waist, and I'm going to capture that in all the way back, and that's a much bushier, heavier tail. Now again, it's a little bit untidy at the end. I'm not quite sure if you can see the end of the fly, but I'm going to come in, just take off some of the fibres there. That's looking spot on. Now, as for fishing this fly, as you can imagine, it's quite a big fly, and I tie this on size 6 long shanks. I tie it smaller. I've got them in various sizes. This is about my favourite size though, because you get maximum movement with this size. Now the next thing, when I can find it, is I'm going to tie in a wire rib. Now this is a 2mm gold. It only serves the purpose of catching in the hackle, because once you've added the body, you can't really see the rib. But I'm going to catch it in on my side. All the way up to the tail. And before I do anything else, I'm going to just get a little bit of wax on. We're going to come back to the gold frits that I used for the first fly. Again, it's the Dave Downey gold frits. I'll catch that in. Like so. Whoop. And then once it's into position, I'm just going to damp down that marabou just to keep it out of my way. I can then get my turns in to create the body. I really like the fact that this has that yellow core. Now, some of the gold's starting to pull away there. Probably didn't help that I wetted my fingers, but I can just keep going until I get back. I'm going to just get as much onto the fly as I can, and then I can catch that into place. Now I've got it in position, I'll just get a few turns, like so. Then I can come in with my scissors. Got a nice sharp point to get into the nooks and crannies there. And so fishing this fly then, the best way, if you're new to angling and you're just starting out, then I would suggest that you only fish one of these on a 10 to 12 foot leader. You can fish it on various lines and it will give you a lot of success. If you're a little more advanced and you're able to handle longer leaders, then a 20 foot leader with 2 of these flies on, 10 foot apart, 10 foot to your fly line. And the reason for that is you're able to change lines easily. All you do is you reel it in until your tippet material's near the reel. You swap the lines if you've got a cassette reel, and then you're fishing at different depths. And this is particularly useful when you're on a large reservoir and you want to change depths to try and fish the different levels of the water column. You can reach depths of up to 25, and if there's little wind, you can even get to depths of 30 feet, depending on your casting ability, of course. There's a lot of factors involved in fly fishing, but that's how I would fish it. If you're fishing it on its own, then certainly a non-slip loop knot or a knot of that description gives the fly even more movement. So let's get on and get it finished up. So again, before I start, we'll just catch that in, and then I'm going to grab my thread. Just make sure you catch that stalk in and it's firmly in place. So I've got that where I want it. Next thing then is the hackle pliers. Sorry, I forgot to mention what I'm using here is just a grizzle cape. As you can see, I'm sadly running out of grizzle hackles. I tie a lot of Humongouses. That won't surprise a few people, but they're just so good. So I'm going to get one turn just in behind the eye, and then I'm going to come back all the way to where I've tied in my gold rib, which I'll now separate from the marabou. Now I'm not putting a lot of pressure on my hackle pliers here. I've got the wire, just going to put the hackle plier there out the way, and I'm going to come back up. The hackle plier wants to get in the show again. Up the body, just securing that hackle into place. I mean, if out of all the flies I'm going to tie today, this is the one you really should try and master. It takes a bit of time, but doesn't anything that's worth the effort. So I'm just getting several turns. See some of my fibres creeping forward there. I'm just going to encourage them to get back into line. And once I've got that secured, I can come in with my fingers and helicopter the wire away. Now, before I carry on, I'm just going to get rid of the excess hackle. There's not much left of it, to be fair. And then, again, before I finish off, I'm just going to get a little bit of varnish onto my thread. Grab my whip finish tool. And finish up the fly. And there we go. Black and gold Humongous. Super effective. Now the eyes are going to give that quite a lot of movement. Long marabou tail. You might suffer from tail nips, but that's all part and parcel of angling. You learn how to adjust, and if need be, you can just pluck that away and snip off some of this. If you're at the fishery and you're finding that you're not connecting with the fish as they're coming in and just nipping that tail, you can always shorten this up, and hopefully that will give you the opportunity to get a fish to the net. I hope you enjoyed the Humongous. Let's move on to the next fly. Well, we come on to the last fly in the trilogy of lures. Now, as I said, these are three of my favourite lures, but I told a little white lie. My all-time favourite lure is the snake. Now, I'm not going to tie this today because a number of reasons. It does take a long time. There's lots of different steps. But at the end of this video, I will put a little video up that shows you how I tie my snakes. For my money, the snake's the most effective fly lure that you can get. If you can't tie them, or you can't be bothered tying them, because they are a dangerous tie. I don't know how many times I've pricked my finger with the articulated hook, but they're definitely worth having. If you can't tie them, buy them. I wouldn't be without snakes in my fly box. It's as simple as that. But the next best thing is a bunny leech, or a zonker, whatever you want to call it. Now, I know you're looking at this one in the vise thinking, pink? Yeah. So, generally leech patterns are black, or you do get them in olive and various other darker shades. But I find that the pink works really well for me. It's caught fish everywhere I've went, small still waters to large reservoirs. It's really effective. So, let's get on and tie it. The hook in the vise is a Hanak H970 barbless hook. This one's on size 8 and it's on a heavy wire finished in black nickel. Now the pink bead you see in the front here is a 4.7mm brass bead from trout line. Now the brass bead here, it's not going to add any weight to the fly. It will add a little weight to the fly, but it weighs next to nothing. So we've got to try and get some more weight onto this fly, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use some lead-free wire. This is at 0.9 from Semplify. Now I keep it on the reel And the reason I do that is it just causes less waste. So I'm going to just get 5 or 6 turns. Onto the shank. And then I don't want to waste this. So I'm going to just push it back a bit. And I want to just use every bit of the material. There's no point in wasting money by just cutting away what you don't need. I'm going to push the wire right up to the bead. And then I'll grab my old scissors. Now I use these scissors for all the rubbish jobs. Cutting chunks of deer hair, cutting wires, tinsels. Never throw away your old scissors, always keep them and use them for other jobs. Everything can always be redone. Just going to push that again, it's trying to back away. And then I've got that in place. Now, what this will do is this is going to give me the weight. And that'll make the fly swim like this in the water. It'll undulate. And if I get a chance, I might try and get them in the swim tank for you later on. But it won't be in this video, sadly. I just simply don't have the time. So, the next thing then, before I do anything else, I'm going to come in with my trusted super glue. And I'm just going to get a good coat around. So a bit more super glue than I usually use, but it's just I want it to sink through and just embed that in. Now I'm using a really heavy denier nano silk. This is a 1/0, and as you can see it's a white Simplify nano silk. I'm going to catch it just in at the butt here, and then I'm going to use that, and it's nice and wide. When I spin it, it'll stretch out, and I'll get good coverage over my lead-free wire. Now I want that to come in a kind of ramp, if you like, at the back. So I'm just going to use my thread to create that ramp. And there we go, I've got real nice coverage on that. Then I can take away the rat's tail. I could have done this at any time, but I chose to hang on to it. All the way up, and then I'll whip finish that. So again, this is another one to, oops, what's happening? This is another one that can definitely benefit from doing prep. If you're going to tie more than one, then get them to this stage. And what I usually do, I'm not going to do it on this one because I haven't blue petered it this time, is I would coat this in super glue and I'd send it off to the side to dry. And that's a really solid base to tie the fly. So next, we're going to prepare our material for the bunny leech itself. I'm using some Uphaven fly fishing zonker strips. These are in Flow Pink, and I've already got a piece out here. Now, the first thing I like to do is cut them into a point. Now, what this does is it tapers down the end, which makes the fly swim that little bit better. So, to carry on with the fly, what am I looking for? I'm going to switch to nano silk. And this is at 12/0, nice and thin. I'll just grab that. Doesn't matter where you catch it in really, because you're going to come to the back of the fly. So I'm not going to come off them thread wraps. I'm going to stop there and take away. And I've left myself just a couple of millimeters up. And what I want to do next is just get the length right. So I want about the length of the fly. So if I take the skin just slightly longer, maybe the length and a quarter, I'm going to pull that back. Then I can come in with my gash scissors and take away what I'm not needing. So I've got my prepared skin. You can see the little pointy bit. And I'm now going to catch that in at the back. Now some are longer than others. I don't get my knickers in a twist with it. People say you get the tail nipping, but that's pack and parcel with all lures really. So I've got that into position. I'm now going to just tidy that up, and what I'm going to do is create a dubbing loop. Now I don't do this often, but for this fly it does help. So I'll create a small dubbing loop, and I'm going to bring it to the back of the fly. Now depending on how well this goes, depends on how many times you have to do this. So I've got my dubbing tool spinner. I hate this. I hate dubbing loops actually. I'm not keen. Probably because I don't tie a whole lot of huge flies, but I'm just going to hang it over the vise. The next thing we've got to do then is we've got to get some more of the zonker strip. Now you get fairly generous packets, which is lucky. And what I want to do with this is just get it combed out. Now once I've got it prepared, I'm going to grab my trusty snip and I'm going to just get that all the way along. It's quite a fiddly part of the process here, but you do get an amazing effect from it. I've tried it with all different materials, so I tried Arctic Fox, but what I found in the end was that the original zonker strip was the best thing for creating the body of this fly. So I've managed to do that. I don't know how well you'll see it. It looks pretty raggedy, but it's not going to make a blind bit of difference, to be honest. So I'll just put that down. And this is where it could all go wrong, folks. So bear with me. I'm going to put my material into the dubbing loop, like so. Tighten up on it, release the tool, and then I'm going to tighten up my dubbing loop, or spin up my dubbing loop, should I say, tighten up. So as you can see, I'm starting to create a brush, which this is going a lot better than it did in practice, I've got to be honest. But once I've got my brush created, I can then start to bring this up the fly. Now this works just as well in olive, black, and pink is my favourite. I think it's because they're just not used to seeing it, you know. It's a big pink thing pulsing through the water, and when you see this in the water, it's absolutely amazing. It just moves and pulses, and if you're doing a sort of jerky retrieve, then you really are getting the best out of this fly. Now as I approach the bead, I'm going to make sure I've got my dubbing loop secured. Like so. Now when you're fishing this, again you want to have something like a perfection loop or a non-slip loop knot to get the most out of the fly. So as you can see, I've got a little bit of white there, which is meant to happen. Now again, there's a lot going on at the front here, so I'm just going to get a whip finish in and take that away. Now I'm going to damp my fingers down once again. I just want to get all that fluffy material back out the way. I don't want it getting caught up in the finish of the fly. And once you've got that out of the way, you can grab your pink floss. Now this is one of the Temu, I think I got this from. It's just pink floss, it's not glow bright or anything. I'm going to catch it and just try and get rid of any loose fibres directly in behind the bead. And it's just to cover up that white really. I don't want the white on the fly. I'll put that back. Now before I finish this one, I'm going to come in with some UV resin. Give it a good coat. You can do it afterwards, but this is just to save a little bit of time. I've held you up enough this evening. It's a long video this, but doing lures is time consuming. So I'll come in with this. I would recommend that you do not try and fish 2 of these. You'll end up wrapping it around your head. Now before I cut away the thread, I'm going to cure that bit of resin. If you want it to come in afterwards and give it another coat of resin, you're more than welcome. It does look a lot better with 2 coats of resin. But again, this is a fly that works well on a longish leader, 10, 15 feet. And you can retrieve it in a lot of different ways, figure of eighting, roly-poly, and it'll give you quite a lot of success. Well guys, there we go. That's my 3 favourite lures, less the snake fly. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave it a like. You could hype it if you liked it that much, and I'll see you all in the next one.